Special guest today, everybody. His name is Tyler Hill. He is a pastor friend of mine. I love him because his heart is so pastoral. He's a retreat leader. He's a spiritual director. He's spent a lot of time, I'm sure he'll share a little bit of his story, hopefully. He's spent some time in a monastery near his home, becoming a part of that community, training with them, learning from them. And so we have a lot of mutual friends. We're influenced by many similar voices. And so I'm just really excited for you guys to get this message. Tyler is who Tyler is, and I think you'll grow to love him in the next 30 minutes, all right? So let's give it up for Tyler.
Hi, everyone. I just want to cry. I'm so happy to be here. I told the men this weekend, but I travel all over the world, sharing and teaching and working with folks, and what you guys have here is legitimately special. There are folks around the world that long for, wish for, and pray for communities like this, that hold this posture of love and openness. A lot of times when I do retreats, I don't get hugs until the end of the retreat. People's like, "Who's this stranger? Why is he here? He looks weird, whatever." And not only this, and then even more so with men. And I showed up yesterday, and everybody just started giving me hugs. That's not normal. Which is a testament to this community. I also want to just make note, I was so impressed by the men yesterday. And I know we all carrying our stuff, but I was so impressed by the men yesterday. And so good job, men. Good job. Danny has been a great friend, and it's been so good to have a comrade in life. And so thank you for trusting me with your people. It's awesome, and then I'll get into the word. I can tell you more about this later. I'm what's called an oblate at a monastery, which pretty much just means I'm a diet monk, and not all the way, just a little bit, And in the Rule of St. Benedict, we study the Rule of St. Benedict, and one of the very first lines in the Rule of St. Benedict is he says, "Listen with the ear of your heart." Listen with the ear of your heart. So to be in this community called Heartway, to be a community that is drawn with their heart, it feels so aligned for me. So again, just thank you for being here. I'd like to share with you as we get started my mantra, the mantra that I carry with me throughout my life. It goes like this: when I'm standing in my belovedness, I have nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear, nothing to gain. A few minutes with this mantra could really expose, I think, for all of us, why this mantra was so transformative for me and is so transformative for the people I work with. I coach and am a spiritual director with folks all over the world, and this is really the core of a lot of the work that we do. The truth is, for many of us, we live with everything to prove, with everything to lose. We all live with a simmering fear. Many of us are trying so often, so consistently to earn love, abundance, and acceptance in our life. With God, right? We're trying to earn it with God through our deeds and our purity and all these things. We're trying to earn it with our friends, and our family. We're always trying to earn our belovedness. And the truth is I still am that way a lot, And I'd like to share with you, before we break down the mantra, how I got to the mantra. You see, growing up, I grew up with a wound of abandonment. Does anybody relate with that? In short, because of many of my life's experiences, I believed that who I was as I was born to be wasn't worthy of sticking around for. And so in short, what I did was I got really good at getting people's attention. Because it hurt so bad when I always perceived that people didn't want to be with me or be around me. I got good at hooking you in and keeping you close. But the truth was, it became a form of manipulation. It was a way that I was controlling people to be around and be with me because of this abandonment wound. So the first way I did this was through baseball. I became a highly recruited athlete, was on my way to be a professional baseball player. But the truth was I didn't really enjoy playing baseball at all. I just was good at it. And until I got to my senior year of high school and I was running around, potentially going to be a professional baseball player, full ride scholarships, the whole 9 yards. You know, I remember sitting in the school bus, coming home from a game, had won the game, hit home runs, the whole kit and caboodle. And I was sitting in the back and had no friends. And I was like, I don't get along with these guys. Like, we're not the same. I'm not a jock. And then I was like, so then I quit. I moved to Colorado Springs. I went to a college that didn't have sports. I was like, I'm going to hang out with the artists. I'm going to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more expressive. And then the funny thing is, though, is I never played an instrument. I had never made art before. And so I was like, what do I do? And everybody was like, well, do you play instruments? And so I lied and I said that I was a poet. Because I figured, well, you can't fake playing the guitar. You can't fake, whatever, but nobody can tell me this isn't a poem. Everybody's got to say it's a poem. So I faked and said that I was a poet. Well, it turns out I was pretty good with my words. Long story short, I had a poem go viral on YouTube, and before I knew it, I was touring the world performing poetry. And so all throughout college, I was preaching in churches and performing poetry all over the world. But again, it mostly was a facade. It didn't come from an honest place. I was preaching in front of thousands of people all across the world, but it wasn't honest. It wasn't honest. People would come to the altar calls and I'd be praying for them, but what they didn't know was the way I would manipulate the music and the lights, and I would say this and there'd be cues and we would emotionally manipulate people for the movement or for the cause. It wasn't real. But at least I was getting attention, right? Then one of my mentors told me to cut it out. And I did. And then I turned into then I went into the hospitality industry after that. I was like, I'm not going to do this spiritual work anymore. So then I opened up a cocktail bar. I started working in coffee, and then it happened again. And I became one of the top-ranked baristas in the world. I started a coffee company, and we served coffee in like all these countries, and I was in these coffee competitions and in magazines, and again, I was the guy, and I was miserable inside. Miserable. Starting my coffee company, there were nights where I would just sleep at the coffee shop while my wife was at home, where I would not be home for days. And there was a 6-week period in this journey where my mom died, my son was born, my first kid, and then the coffee company doubled in size. And that all happened in a 6-week period. So, just a few things. And I managed to hold it together for about 6 months. And then what happened after about 6 months is I woke up one morning. I thought it was just the next day, right? And I'd actually been sleeping for 8 days. I'd been sleeping for 8 days. And so I wake up, I'm like, something's broken. And so I go to my pastor's house, and we have a day together, and then he gave me $500 and says, you need to go to therapy, which he was right. And then I started going to therapy, and then I ended up meeting a spiritual director. And that's where I got this mantra. You see, what he had realized was I had spent my whole life trying to earn my belonging. Through being the guy, through being famous, through being popular, I was trying to earn it. I was trying to earn my belovedness, and this is the season where everything shifted. This is where I got the mantra. It was from my spiritual director. And so what really set me on this journey was that I knew in my head God loved me. Right? I'd been taught this my whole life. I'm a 5th generation minister. Like, it's in the blood, it's in the bones. We talk about God's love all the time. But how come I wasn't living that way? I wasn't living beloved. I had everything to lose, everything to fear, right? And so what I did with my spiritual director is I kept saying, dude, this mantra is great, but it's not real. Like, nobody actually lives like this. This isn't an actual experience. So what I said in my head was, if I could maybe find a time in my story where I knew belovedness at just once, where I felt what it felt like to not have anything to prove, nothing to, if I could really have known one of those times in my story, then maybe I could know it once again. So I started examining my whole life. Every moment I could think of, was there a moment where I truly knew belovedness? And that journey got more and more discouraging over time. Because for my whole life, I was grasping for this feeling of welcome with nothing to prove, lose, fear, or gain. And then the moment came where everything changed. And I had a dream being in the womb of my mother. And in that dream, what I had recognized was in the womb, there was nothing to prove. In the womb, it was safe. There was nothing to fear. I didn't own anything. There was no corporate ladders or social media following. You see, there was a moment in my story where belovedness was fully embodied and fully known, and it was the very first thing I ever knew. It was when I was in the womb. Is the very first thing I ever knew. And this has become the foundation of the work I do with leaders as I coach and work in transformational coaching and spiritual direction with addicts who are getting sober, entrepreneurs as they grow their businesses, is that we have to work from this knowing. You see, the womb really, really matters. Everybody say womb. Connection, my friends, is the first thing we ever knew. We all have been in the womb. All of us. It's the first thing we ever knew. Before breath, before light, before the world called anything into us, before the world called us anything, the womb is the first thing we ever knew. It's the deepest knowing we ever had. Diane Ackerman captures it like this. But for a baby in the mother's womb, her heartbeat performs the ultimate cradle song of peace and plenty. The surf-like waves of her respiration lull and soothe. The womb is a snug, familiar landscape, an envelope of rhythmic warmth, and the mother's heartbeat, a steady clarion of safety. You see, this original connection, this thing that we knew in the womb, it hardwired us for connection, belonging, and interdependence. It's in our DNA. The great Saint Brene Brown, anybody know her? If you don't, you better get on the train. She says it like this. She says, we are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong. When those needs are not met, we don't function as we were meant to. We break, we fall apart, we hurt others, we get sick. When we don't know belovedness, when we don't embody this sense of connection, it hurts. It hurts. You want to know who knew this belovedness well, by the way? Jesus, there it is. He too embodied this womb-like connection. It's one of my favorite parts of the incarnation. That Jesus too learned what it felt like to depend on something beyond him for his very survival. He was dependent, hear me out on this one, he was especially dependent on a woman to keep him going. He breastfed. She nurtured him, kept him alive. Any spiritual person needs dependence on a woman somewhere. A word from the Lord, thanks be to God. So the question becomes then, if like Jesus, we too were born beloved, everybody say born beloved, then why is it so hard for us to live that way? If this was our first knowing, if our nature is one of connection and belovedness, why do most of us live with everything to prove? Why do we live with so much fear? Why are we trying to gain our purpose and belonging? Why is it so hard for us to live beloved? We often sing so much of God's infinite love. We hear sermons preached on God's goodness. We read about God's love for us, and yet most of us have never fully claimed the identity. We don't live that way. How did we get here? How did we get here? I would suggest, Heartway Church, that our lives are woven from the fabric of the stories we tell ourselves. The narratives we repeat with the men, we talked about this yesterday, the stories we repeat to ourselves over and over and over. And many of us, especially in Western Christianity, have inherited the story of separation. The belief that we were born bad. This idea that we were born separate from God. The belief that we were born apart from love, belonging, and God's embrace, rather than actually being born beloved. We've been given this story that because of the grand mistakes of two people called Adam and Eve, that humanity will forever be born wretched and worthy of punishment. And this is the story many of us have inherited. This is the story that many of us start from. But I'd like to suggest that there's also a different story. And we have to be really serious about the stories we tell ourselves. Stories are like soil. And if we plant our seeds in bad soil, what happens? They don't grow very well. So this is the story where everything starts. This is maybe the most important story of them all. If this is the starting story. And because so many of us have inherited the story of separation, which is the antithesis of connection, and what did Brene Brown teach us? When we don't live in connection, we get sick. It hurts. It hurts. So what do we do when this hurts? Well, we try to ease the pain. We try to ease the pain. How do we do that? The great St. Henry Nouwen says we live from three big lies to ease this pain. The three big lies are, I am what I have, I am what I do, and I am what other people say about me. So when we don't feel this deep connection in our soul, what do? We create these lives based on things we can control. If I'm not beloved, when I feel like I don't belong, maybe if I get this watch, if I get this car, if I get this, if I get this thing, if I look this way, then I will belong. Or if I get this job, if I have this ministry, if I create a movement, then I will be important. Or I am what other people say about me. And because we don't feel connected, then we create these lives based on these lies in order to manufacture a sense of belonging. Are you following? So when we don't believe we're beloved, we deploy these tactics in order to manufacture belovedness. But beneath all of this striving, beneath the false self, this is what we call the false self, by the way. Beneath all of this is a person that God created before the foundations of the world. The self that God knit together in the womb of your mother. The false self, as many of us talked about yesterday, is exhausting to live within. Always trying to manage all that stuff. It's exhausting. So how do we get out of this? How do we live in a different way? Well, we have to begin to tell a different story. We have to tell a different story, not the one of separation. And I think there's two people in the Holy Text that really help us understand this. And their names are actually Adam and Eve. You see, the story of Adam and Eve, it starts in a womb. There's some Jewish teachers that would suggest the Garden of Eden is actually a metaphor for the womb, believe it or not. And let's think about it for a second. First of all, they're naked. No clothes, totally naked. And in Eden, in its wholeness, guess what? There was nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear, nothing to gain. There was abundance. It was perfection. They just were who they were. As they were born, there was enough. It was a womb. It was a womb-like experience, okay? Naked and vulnerable. There was no shame. They were fully held by their Creator. Are you following? Isn't that interesting? Okay, now, then the serpent comes into the story. And it says, you know, Eden, there's this tree, and there's some knowledge you don't have. You know, God's been withholding something from your birth nature. You don't have all the knowledge that is available to you. There is something outside of yourself that you need to be made whole. But what's interesting about this to me is that it's not like Eve didn't have knowledge. She wasn't like this like nebulous, mindless, like, you know, like glob of cells. Like she had knowledge. She was married. That takes knowledge to be in a relationship. Can I get an amen? Right? That takes some knowledge. They had work. They were doing things. It's not like she was just a mindless, like she had knowledge. I believe she had knowledge. Here's what the lie of the serpent was. Who you were as you were born to be is inadequate. You need more to be made whole. She already had everything she needed to exist well. The lie was who you are, you don't have enough knowledge. She already had knowledge. Go get some more. More this, more that, more this, more that. Does that sound familiar? Huh. The lie wasn't about her getting something she didn't have. The lie was that in her birth state, she wasn't enough. And we all live under this same illusion today. The serpents of our society, social media, our own insecurities, they tell us who we are as we were designed to be isn't enough, and you have to go get more. This is the lie of the serpent we hear all day long. And so what does she do? She goes and she eats the apple. I guess it's just a fruit. We actually don't know if it's an apple or not, but I want you guys to think about this for a second. We talk about the story of separation, right? Because of all the things we've done, we're separate from God. Because of all of our sins, because of all the porn we've watched, or the money we've gambled away, or because we cheated on our spouse, we're just born to be separate and far from God. Eve and Adam, they eat the fruit, and what happens? Well, first of all, nothing happens, actually. Nothing. That does happen in a second. You want to know what actually happens in Genesis 3:8? We don't see an angry God kicking the kids out of the castle. We don't see somebody coming out with a flaming sword. You know what it says in Genesis 3:8? It says God was walking in the garden in the cool of the evening. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't pissed off. He wasn't worked up in a tizzy. He was on a walk in the cool evening of the day when you eat your apples. What is God's posture? Hey, where are you? Hey, where you at? Hey, girl. And yet when we sin, when we make a mistake, when we fail, how do we so often perceive God to be? What have we been told? The very minute you do something bad, you're cast out, you're bad, you're away, you're out of the womb. And they were still in the garden. That's the story that we start with. That's where our story starts. When Adam and Eve ate the fruit, though, something did shift. But it wasn't in God's love towards them. It was in their ability to receive it. It was in their ability to receive it. They were the ones who hid. They were the ones who put their clothes on. They were the ones who looked and noticed that they were naked and felt shame. And this is a pattern we repeat over and over and over. We hide from God because we feel shame, because we believe our birth state as it is isn't good enough. And this is where this lack of vulnerability continues to just go. We hide and we change ourselves. We put on more and more clothes, more and more outfits, more and more what I have, what I do, what other people say about me. And then all of a sudden we wonder, why can't anybody see me? Why do I feel so ostracized from God and from society? And God's like, dog, you're wearing so many costumes. I don't recognize you. As Father Thomas Keating says, he says, the chief thing that keeps us separate from God is the thought that we're separate from God. Okay, the chief thing that separates us from God is the thought that we're separate from God. And this, my friends, is the pattern of Scripture, by the way. Cain feared he was beyond restoration. God placed a mark of protection on him. Israel repeatedly turned away over and over and over and over and over again, and yet God still pursued them. Jesus all of the time. The woman caught in sin, the prodigal son, Peter who denied him 3 different times. You know what God did after Peter denied him 3 times? He made him breakfast. He made him a meal. All right. You guys ready for something sick? There are 2 words in the Bible here that I love here when we talk about the way God moves towards us. The first one is rachum. The second word is rachamim. Rachum is often translated to compassion. Everybody say compassion. Rachamim is the Hebrew word for womb. Woo. They share the same root word in Hebrew. I was talking with a rabbi a few years about this, and he told me this. He says, whenever we read the word compassion in the Bible, Christ had compassion on them. You know how we can read that? That Christ is rewombing them. Christ is rewombing us, bringing us back to the place of belovedness. The womb is the place of belovedness. Nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear, nothing to gain. When we screw up, what do we see over and over and over? It says it all throughout the Bible. Christ has compassion. When we mess up, Christ has compassion. He has compassion and he moves towards us. And all of a sudden it makes sense, all of the mothering image. You know what El Shaddai means in the Bible, by the way? The many-breasted one. A God who nurtures, who brings into the womb. When Jesus says, I am like a mother hen who covers all of her chicks. This is what compassion is like. When we show compassion to one another, it's like a mom who brings us close. What does the text say? Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion for the child she has borne? Of course she will not forget the child at her breast. Christ, God, does not forget us. We are brought back into the womb time and time again. We are told the story of separation, but the divine tells us a story of compassion. We were born beloved. You want to know something? We're still that way. When we feel lost, when we feel unworthy, God does not turn away. God moves toward us. The great, great poet John O'Donohue, he once wrote, the sound of the drum brings us consolation because it brings us back to the time when we were at one with our mother's heartbeat. It was a time of complete belonging, no separation. Compassion, my friends, is the experience of being brought back to the womb. So how do we learn to live this way? We have to begin to tell ourselves a different story. I don't know about you, but like, could you imagine? Like, what if I told you this? Sometimes when I start riffing like this, I get in trouble, so forgive me if I say a cuss or something. Could you imagine my newborn daughter? I have a son and a daughter. My son's named Elias. My daughter's 2 years old. Her name's Amaya, which means beloved in French. Could you imagine her being born? And me, first of all, saying, "What a wretch." But that's the theology. That's the theology. I mean, that is the story most of us have been given. You see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? And then do you think I wait? Like, she's born and they're like, "What's her last name? What's your last name?" And I'm like, "Well, we're not quite sure if she's in the family yet. We have to see if she's gonna like serve the poor. We have to see if she's gonna like, be a Christian. We got to see if she's going to be in jail or not, if she's going to be on probation or, we got to wait to see if she's in the... No, she came from me and my wife, so she's a hill. You know where you came from? God. We have the breath of God in us. You're in the family. You inherited this. I almost said shit. Sorry. We inherited this. We inherited it. We were born into it. This is our inheritance, to be beloved. Nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to fear, nothing to gain. Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Isaiah 49:1, "Before I was born, the Lord called me. From my mother's womb, he has spoken my name." Psalm 22:10 and 11, "From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God." And nothing, as the text teaches us, can separate us from the love of God. What's the freedom of this? It's the freedom to live as ourselves. So many of us have felt who I am as I was born to be is not good enough, so I have to change me. And what this is saying is, no, you get to be you, freely and fully, unapologetically you. God wants you to be the you were designed to be in the womb, to embrace that in its fullness. To not be some baseball player, to not be some poet, to be me, to be Tyler Hill all the way. Freely and fully himself. This is what it means to live as the beloved. To live from this place. How do we really get here? How do we really get here? There's kind of like two things I really want to say as we start to wrap up. The great lie of every preacher. I'm about to wrap up. We have to go back to the womb. We have to be born again. We have to go back to that place. We have to go back to our womb-like nature. What did Jesus always say? Bring the kids to me. Why? Because they didn't complicate it. They're close to the womb. My 2-year-old daughter, you know what she doesn't care about, for example? I was sent a picture this morning at my hotel of my daughter completely naked wearing a snow hat. She's running around the house. She don't care being naked. She does not care. She has no shame. No shame at all. It's only as they get older, they don't like being naked anymore. right? That's the story, right? Like we're born beloved, Adam and Eve who she is as she is born right now, she has no shame. She could have hit her brother in the face 3 minutes ago, and then 3 minutes later, she is fine being who she is. She doesn't hold on to it. She just stays in her birth nature because she knows nothing's getting her kicked out of the family, right? So she is vulnerable. She is freely and fully herself. How do we do this? We be ourselves. We be ourselves. A couple ways we be ourselves. First of all, you do kid things. You have to awaken your childlike wonder again. You got to go have fun. You got to make art. You've got to dance. You've got to be who you are. You know, back in the day, like I'll give you a perfect example. Like back in the day where I used to travel the world, I used to be like y'all in Florida don't dress like we dress in California or in Colorado. And I used to think, okay, I would used to go look up, okay, how should I dress to like make sure I fit in with the people in whatever town I go to so that I can relate with them. And now I just wear what I want. You know, like things like this, you just wear what you want. You just do your thing. You be you. And I promise you, St. Augustine, he says, God, teach me to know myself so that I can know you. We go back to the things that make us passionate, the things that make us happy, the things that ignite joy. We also have to be vulnerable about the things that are hard in us, the things that we've done that we're ashamed of. We've got to tell people. We've got to bring them to the light. What was the acronym you said for love? Living out vulnerability every day. This is how we get to compassion. Psalm 139 says this completely, and this really will be the end. You all know David. You all know about David in the scripture, right? He has a story on him, right? There's some like success, and he creates a lot of beauty. He like does all this cool stuff. He also did some not cool stuff, right? A lot of war, some murder in there, you know, a few things. So Psalm 139, just let's follow this here for a minute. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle in the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me. If I say I can hide in the darkness, the light will come, and even in the darkness won't be dark to you. Okay, so what's he doing here? Self-examination. He is examining the totality of his story, the fullness of his experience. God, search me and know me. You know everything about me and my story, the whole enchilada. Does that make sense? So this is him hiring a spiritual director. This is him going to therapy. This is him, journaling every night, right? Self-examination, okay? And then this is where we get. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's. You see, he examined everything. He brought it to God, and what did he find but compassion? And he remembered that he wasn't what he did. He wasn't what he didn't do. He didn't identify with those things. When he brought full self-examination to God, he found compassion, and God reminded David of his womb-like nature. And then David says this, God, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Who is he talking about? God, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Who's he talking about? Himself. God, I can't help. God, I just looked at my whole story. I looked at all the things I did, all the things I didn't do, all the promises I didn't keep, all the cool things I've done. And I'm looking at you in the mirror, Tyler, and God, you crushed it. I can't help but love myself. That's what he got to. Bono says it like this: free yourself to be yourself if only you could see yourself. You've got to be yourself. And what you will find is your birth nature. Because you were born, beloved, and nothing can separate you from the love of God. You are still that way. And when we love ourselves, guess what then we get to do? We get to love our neighbor. But we can't, but what does the text say? We have to love our neighbor as? Bingo, that's how this works. That's how this works. So my friends, may you remember that you were born beloved. And you are still that way.
Let's give it up, everybody, for Tyler. Wasn't that awesome? So great. I love introducing you guys to my friends. Amazing. Hey, don't forget we got the lemonade stand out there. And we got a kickball tournament coming up, y'all. Sign up, okay? I hope you got something out of this. Tyler's going to be in the lobby if you want to say hi. Love you. God bless you. Have a great rest of the week.